Great. I think that's rolling. Great. Okay. So now this is going to be a technical lecture, and I'd love to call it lecture 1, but it wouldn't surprise me that you guys are already experimenting with AWS or Amazon Web Services, and we'll just call it AWS from here on. You all are smart. You're looking for this inside edge, and I think one of the interesting things about you guys is your definition of a good education is the feeling that you're being given the secrets, you're being given the inside track. And I remember being in my own professor's class. I was at graduate school, and they sent us to I went to Claremont Graduate University, and they would send us to Harvey Mudd to do our programming classes. And it was a lot of young people who were freshmen, basically. But the professor is a fellow by the name of Zachary Dodds. And I just felt from the first minute that I was in the inside track. I was saying, this man is defining a good education. Yale PhD, sure, hard to come by those people. But ever since that class, I've always been trying to capture the spirit of that person. I guess I just was the hairs would raise up on my arms and the back of my neck. Like, I just felt like he brought forth that proper Yale divinical energy to what he was doing and renewing and regenerating people. Just a great, great teacher. But I think that to be in the inside track requires some attentiveness and some hard work, and it requires the departure from childhood. You need to have an exceptional brain to be given the inside track to things. So I think YouTube is a good strategy for us because, yes, you're being put on an inside track. Yes, you're being given a proper developer's education. Yes, it's not trivial. No, a lot of people won't be able to do this, but the good thing is that you guys will have this social safety net called YouTube, wherein you come to class, relax, get what you get, relax again, and then go back and continuously repeat. Does that make sense? I think probably 25% of my students speak a non-English language before they arrive in class, and then Cal Poly is their English time of day. Does that make sense? And they're from all sorts of places. They're from Asia, Latin America. They're Americans with dual lingual, bases. And we're in LA County. So if you look at a ballot box, to vote in LA County means that you have 40 different languages on that ballot. It's a really, really stimulating place to live. And don't be surprised if I'm kind of inquisitive or getting you to talk a little bit about your backgrounds, because I want that knowledge of the rest of the world. You can't do that in most cities on planet Earth. I laugh at the diversity of New York City because we have so much more. New York City's like a little cousin to LA. You're like, oh, New York, we love you. You're a little guy, like you're a little bro, even though they're like, the Big Apple. So let's log in now. AWS, I want you to get in the account. I had an outstanding student who came up and asked me, do we need to put in our credit card information? And I was kind of like, yep, you need to do that. And AWS, you're not going to get charged so long as you do what I ask of you. If you go wandering off and you run up an AppSync or a device farm or run mobile analytics, or Sumerian, or basically anything that I tell you not to do, you are running the likelihood of getting charged. It could be hundreds of dollars if you refuse to do what I ask you to do and you do something else. Like you run up a MySQL data farm, right? Like you do something impressive, AWS will charge your card at the end of the month, and we'll have to do a phone call to AWS. If you just make some mistakes in your first month, it will be redeemed. Like AWS will laugh and erase the charges. So you're not in the danger zone. You're not surrounded by sharks. But it's good that you're being fiscally responsible, with your money. My goal is by the end of this class, you will have paid for parking, when it comes to my class. Like there just aren't any books that you need to buy for this class. Does that make sense? But but I think you're going to be reading a lot, and you're going to be assembling a lot of information. So also when you go to my classes, it's important to not try to keep up, because I'm going to try to go as fast as I can and prove to you that things work in a certain way. I'm not here to walk you through it. Okay, that's what the YouTube is for. So again, that's what's been going on at Stanford for quite some time now, where I'm not sure if the creators of YouTube were Stanford kids. I don't think that's how it went. I think they were somebody went somewhere else, but I'm sure that there's been plenty of Stanford DNA in the YouTube experiment. Frankly, most people at Stanford CS teach as if they're being recorded for YouTube, and so they don't hold back. And I think that goes back to this idea of how can we get the young people on the inside track? How can we give them some knowledge that's truly world class? And how can we do it so they won't fail? They won't give up. So this means that I'm going to go fast. And you're going to need to watch this YouTube lots. And I'm going to try to pack in more into this YouTube than I ever have before. So I think the idea is just sit back and enjoy the show and crush it later on YouTube. So I'm going to assume that you have this kind of an account, that you have an S3 scalable storage service. These are all buckets. You won't have these buckets. These are my buckets. I try to put everything that I have in my GitHub up on my AWS. Now, my AWS won't be your AWS. My AWS is what I've put into it, and it's my cloud. And it's, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, maybe getting on close to 10 years old. Yours is going to be fresh. It's going to be rather empty. And so what we recommend is to try to upload some things, And so there's this nice relationship between GitHub where we're going to demonstrate some things. So if you go into our 311, this is our GitHub, right? You remember this URL. Probably memorized it. You guys are so smart. It's scary how self-reliant and smart you guys are. So this is our main place. But our first unit is going to be 1. And you notice that it goes 1, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I need to put 2 and 3 up there. The GitHub that we had last December is going to be different. We're updating it, making it hopefully better. So each time you come to class, it's going to shift a little bit. Now, to me, I think what's funny about GitHub is that you can do it one of two ways. GitHub is just files. And these files originate on my Mac or my PC. And you can see that Bootstrap folder is right there. And what I do is I run my GitHub desktop as the teacher. And I go ahead and make changes to my 311 repository, right? It's called 311. And then my GitHub syncs those changes to my GitHub. And maybe I'll demonstrate it now, maybe I'll demonstrate it later. But basically, everything I put in my local file here, I just synchronize it with a button press, and then you'll see it on the website. So when it comes to coding, GitHub is a good friend of mine because if I have a mistake somewhere, I can update things. And also if I put something together on my desktop that pertains to whatever you're doing, then boom, I can push it to your GitHub quickly. Now that's only half the story, because if you guys sign in, sign into your GitHub account, and I'm logged in, right? Then you can clone or download whatever's inside of this, and you can open it in your own instance of GitHub desktop. Now that's good for you guys and girls, because let's say I have a large file system. I have a fairly well-developed example such as this. Well, look at all of the dependencies here. You've got these 3 folders. Boom, by you grabbing all of those files automatically with a press of a button over GitHub, that means you've got everything that I have. And also, if I change something, you'll have it as soon as you press the sync button. So let me say this. I'm on the giving side of the GitHub right now. You're on the receiving side of it. That's good. And you can make your own repository and be on the giving side just as easily. For today's lesson, it's particularly relevant because what I've done is I've gone to Bootstrap, right? And I've gotten, get started. They've rearranged this page a little bit, but I go over to download, and boom, I've just downloaded Bootstrap to my downloads. And let's undo that. And so you can see that Bootstrap beta, I go in there, and then this is the compiled this is the developer version. And if I just quickly download the entirety of this, what I want to do is I want to get started. They rearranged the site. That's okay. I can go ahead and I think download the compiled version.
Or is it the one that's in the top, on the top right?
That one is going to be maybe the source. No. Well, we'll clarify. That beta dist should be good. Usually the distribution is exactly what you want. So let me clarify. Was it the source file that I grabbed? Yeah, the source files should be, no, the compiled CSS and JSS should be adequate for you. I'm sorry that it's changed since I last did this lecture. Sorry about that, me being lazy. But what I want to emphasize here is that that dist stands for distribution, and that means that you can begin to use those files very soon. Now let me say this. Are you struggling to see that, the back row? Is it hard to see this? Say so.
It's a little small. Yeah.
Okay. I think my folder here is going to be hard to see. What about this website? Can you see this? Okay. This is what matters right now, because I can't change the definition of this, but what you see here is going to be the exact same as what you see here on GitHub. I'm sorry to move fast here, but this is going to be the same folder that you end up downloading from Bootstrap. Okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to grab that very folder that you've downloaded from Bootstrap, from the Bootstrap website, which is this folder. Go on in there and just begin to make a new HTML file right then and there. So you can go into your Eclipse or into your NetBeans and then just save your HTML file to this Bootstrap beta dist folder, and it will all work right away. So let me give you a quick example. Here is my Bootstrap distribution folder. Mine have fonts and JS in them because my version is a couple weeks, or it might be a month and a half older than the latest version. Your version is going to be the same basic thing as mine with some changes. It's going to be the same thing. But what I've done is I've put my new files that I'm going to make today right next to the files that I've downloaded. So here's what you're going to get. Bootstrap dist. And then you're going to have these files right there. And you're going to put the files that you're going to make for my class right next to that CSS and JS files. So this is just an example of me doing something quickly. You're not advised to just hack it right away, like right in front. I know you guys are smart and you guys are all good at what you do, but allow me to just discuss first before you jump in, because you're going to miss something and I'm not going to stop. It's my job to bulk load information into your brain, and you can slow it down with YouTube. So in short, what you're going to do here is you're going to go over to my GitHub, you're going to go and check out this folder, and then you can grab varieties of these files. But really what I think is most efficient is for you guys to synchronize this repository and do no work at all. Just go clone or download. And if you go open in desktop and you're logged in, it will bring you to a link to download the GitHub software, the GitHub desktop. And I know that this is a lot happening one time, but that's why we have YouTube. Open in desktop will bring you to a link to download GitHub desktop, and then you can synchronize with a few buttons with what I have online. The only reason why I say that is as you can see, there's this distribution folder, right? It's what I got from Bootstrap. And then inside of it, there are all these other folders with all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot it's a lot of stuff. So it's easier to kind of just grab what I have rather than, but it's up to you. Either way is going to be perfectly fine for you guys. So let's get into the crux of what Bootstrap is. Now, if you've used Twitter, you've used Bootstrap. I think my Twitter is pretty pedestrian. I don't think anything too nasty is there. This is how I tweet. It's just a lot of crypto people and a lot of Bitcoin people. But you can see what happens when I expand the size of this page. It consistently tries to fit within the scale of the page. Now, Twitter is this website that really operates within only a percentage of the browser space. But what makes Bootstrap particularly interesting is that you can see that the page automatically sort of resizes itself and reformats itself. So as it gets bigger, it optimizes itself for the size of the browser window. Now, one of the conundrums that we have faced in the tech community is that web development typically we need to make 3 or 4 versions of every website depending upon the browser that you're using. Now, we haven't done that for about 10 years because of Bootstrap. I think the arrival of the various Apple mobile devices, iPhone, iPad, and then, of course, the Samsung devices has meant that no single version of a website will ever be seen in the same way. You all have, if you all just put your phones up, just grab your phone, just put it up in the air, and just look around. If you're in the front row, kind of look around. Look at all the different sizes of phones. Some of you are slightly bigger. Carla, you have this wonderful green reptilian phone that has, here, put that up there. See, she has a slightly, here, lift it up. You can see her phone is slightly smaller. I have one just like that. Some of you have the iPhone Plus, the gramophone that is ginormous. Here, you can put it down now. But also, some of you might also have Retina laptops. You might have iPad Pros. You might have Notes. You probably have different form factors, which means that the boundaries of any given website are going to be different. So now Twitter is strangely not acting very responsibly right now. But most websites, if I go to Bootstrap, which is by the Twitter people, is going to resize itself for the scale of the page. So you can see this menu right here appears once it grows small enough. So you can see that's at the moment of compression. So this is about a Galaxy Note right here, right? A phablet, and then this is, an iPhone or a smaller phone. This is a Carla phone, a C phone, a Carla phone. Carla's an awesome kid for being in the front row. And now you are immortal because your name is on YouTube. But then this is more of what a laptop has, Chromebook, Apple, the Alienwares. The Retinas, they're going to have more screen real estate. And so if I design a page, some of the page may fall apart or not render once I go to a phablet, or from a phablet to an iPhone, or from an iPhone to a iPad Pro. There are literally thousands of combinations of form factors. So the idea of Bootstrap is to be responsive and to calculate the viewport or the size of the browser window before it renders the page, right? Hence, we have JavaScript within the folders themselves. So you can see this JavaScript is actually loading at the same time your website. And that JavaScript is doing the viewport calculations to optimize your code within the size of the browser window. And that's a big element to Bootstrap. Now also, Bootstrap is a lot of built-in styling. It's a lot of good looks. It's a lot of elements, elegant web design, etc. And frankly, from the standpoint of a programmer, a lot of what we do is the movement of secure data. We do a lot. What makes us distinctive is not necessarily UI. This class is going to fight the notion of UI because all the big web companies do not have very much invested in UI. Don't tell somebody at Craigslist that UI matters. Don't tell somebody at Amazon that UI matters. You know, the folks at Facebook will say, well, UI matters so long as you have very little of it, right? Good design is not putting chrome all over everything. You know, good design is having a distinct, decided minimum of design. And so really, if you don't go to Google and talk about UI, you know, Google is learning UI because of Apple being in their neighborhood. Apple is the one company that benefits specifically from having a UI. And Apple is one of the few companies that makes its own font and its own user experience. Everybody in the Valley adores Apple. You know, everybody there is in the cult of Mac. And Google is now making great design. You know, Android looks sensational, and they're doing design, but they're literally, you know, 5, 6, 7 years later than Apple. But when you look at big companies who are winning in the internet space, you know, frankly, Google is not a UI company. Google has thrown away the idea of UI almost from the beginning in favor of being an analytics company, in favor of having quality data rather than aesthetic data. And let me just say that, you know, Google is I think they're worth about the same thing as Goldman Sachs, you know, built not upon UI, but built upon quality of data. So here at Cal Poly, what we are going to say right now is we're going to emphasize quality of data, we're going to emphasize speed of data, we're going to emphasize accuracy of data, we're going to emphasize security of data. And so largely being a web developer in CIS 311 is using text mostly, not designing UIs. You know, we do not necessarily believe that UI offers a neurological advantage over plain old text, because frankly, if it did, then sites like Craigslist and there's a lot of, I mean, sites like this would not be the dominant way of finding apartments and use cars and jobs if UI was important. Here, let's go to sublets. Well, let's go to a garage. Let's go to heavy equipment. Jewelry, yes, something laughable. Cash for jewelry. This would not be the way that we sell used jewelry if UI mattered. What is that? Hitler, Nazi, German? Yeah, $200. Wonderful. I mean, you wouldn't sell Nazi memorabilia this way if UI was so important. And now that's cool. Vintage jewelry box. Oh boy, $10. Are you kidding me? That's going down. We're buying that. Look at how cool that is. Now I'm getting all these emotions about this jewelry box, not based upon the UI. Nobody from design school works at Craigslist. Craigslist hasn't changed anything. Does that make sense? They are distinctly afraid of altering. I think, you know, there's so little design that's happening here. This is almost an emphasis on pure information. And let me say this, Craigslist, I don't know what their annual income is, but you know, it's a 100 million plus company. So what I'm saying to you as scrappy, kind of down to earth, you know, well brought up Cal Poly people is don't get bothered with UI. Get bothered about the words. Get focused on the words that are in your website. Be a word and a data person, and you're going to do fine, because UI companies are a dime a dozen. The problem with Bootstrap is that anybody can have good-looking UI. The moment that you embed Bootstrap within your site, it's going to look good. It's going to look mainstream. And let's put it this way. The entire web looks the same right now. Okay? When I go to the very center of global design, which is Apple, let me just say that the UI here is extremely similar to that which you would find on Bootstrap itself. So it's as if Apple has, I'm not going to say that Apple has given up, because they have not. I mean, they're a product company. They're not a web development company. And their website is the definitive website for the internet right now. It used to be CNN. Now it is Apple, distinctly. You know, it used to be New York Times. Great website, great looking, not defining design for the web, right? Everybody looks at the Apple site to see how you do things. You know, they're ahead of the curve here. But let me say that it's as if Apple has given up the search for UI. I mean, that's the native browser. And this nav bar at the top, I don't mean to be a design, you know, get hysterical about design, but there's nothing on this site that could not be done by anyone in this class right now. Now, you notice that the neurological, you put text right here, then an image right here. Image right here, then text right here. That tiling, that's Apple's own IP. Apple is the one who are going to do those things first, right? And so Silicon Valley being the bevy, the mother ship, right, of startups, right, in the digital space and in culture right now, they're going to go to this website to imitate things. And let me just say that I don't see anything particularly earth-shattering, because to me, it looks just like Bootstrap. And I'm thinking, well, who is changing who? Is Apple changing Bootstrap, or is Bootstrap changing Apple? And I'm going to say, in my own humble opinion, that Bootstrap is rendering the influence upon the Apple website. I mean, I remember going to the Mercedes-Benz website for the last few years, and they would just use the lock standard Bootstrap. And I said to myself, well, if it's good enough for Mercedes, then it will be adequate for our first-year web development students to do too. Okay. Now, let me say this. Here's Mercedes. Now, they have finally made their own design. Finally, the Benz website is its own animal. But let me say this carousel is like straight from Bootstrap. And there are 1,000 Bootstrap carousels. Oh, okay. Here's the first slide. Yeah, there's 1,001 carousels, on the Bootstrap website, and Benz just simply has wonderful products, and they're just putting images of them. And that's the same idea that we have right here. So I don't need for us to get too, I don't want you guys to come to class with scarves on. I don't want you guys to be wearing Doc Martens and being designers. You can wear camo, that looks good, but you're not allowed to wear camo and a scarf and Doc Martens and suddenly be an art school person. Okay, UI is not going to matter. Data matters, and getting data fast, that's accurate, that's what people respond to. And let me just close that point by saying, how many times a day are you interrupted by text messages? It happens all day long. And if you receive a text message, the first thing you do is stop what you are doing and read the text message. But let me say this, what is so urgent about the text message? There's no design in the text message. There's no media in the text message. It is pure neurological outreach. Within seconds, you know what somebody is thinking. And so that's a great example of speed, accuracy, data quality. And when you have those things, just plain old text will be fine. Okay, but it's that urgency, that will stop people from creating new children, right, in order to read a text message, right? So plain old text will be just fine so long as your data means something. So I'm going to be thinking more about the speed of how you interact with the cloud. How much data can you move? How good is that data? How accurate is that data? How is your business process generating accurate and good data and not irritating your users, etc.? Computers are basically an imposition on our lives, and they're a source of stress. So how can we make them nurturing and valuable, right, maternal, rather than intrusive and totalitarian? That's where we're at right now. Why is Facebook failing? None of you have Facebook open right now. 10 years ago, everybody would have Facebook on all the time. Why is Facebook disappearing? Well, it's totalitarian. People find it icky, right? There's a movement away from that. Technology is a source of stress. So your problem is, how can your text, right, that you have in your site be valuable? Okay. So let me talk for another moment, and then we'll take a break. So here is S3. Now, the idea with S3, you want to be able to upload everything that you make to S3, and then it should render on the web. so here is a, here's just a very simple page. And it says, you have arrived. You have arrived. That's all it says on the page. And what I want you to be doing is to be making extremely simple HTML products right now, uploading it. So I think this is all the HTML that's there. Then uploading that to S3, and then leveraging the fact that you have a public-facing URL and that you have an HTTP mechanism right now on the first day, so that you can push your content out over the web. That's a good place to begin. HTTP is in fact a key service that you must control to get the web to people, right? And we will go from there. So with that gives us a place to talk about HTML, right? Hypertext markup language travels over HTTP, hypertext transfer protocol, right? It's optimized for the give and take of text, right? And the marshaling of text, to bits, and to codexing those bits into text so people can read them. So, so let's do this. Given that you guys are big people and that you can decide how you want to grab this text, you can either grab it one file at a time from our GitHub, or you can go ahead and sync with GitHub and just have it on your desktop. I like the second one for this first lesson because there are a lot of files. So try to sync with GitHub. It's worth 5 minutes. Check it out. So what I want to do is I want to go my Bootstrap, my Unit 1 Bootstrap. And I think I can get my little lecture done fairly fast. You can see that if I expand it, that's what, Carla, you're going to be my #1 student. Carla, I apologize because you're at the front. So this is like going to SeaWorld and getting splashed by the dolphins. Like you want to be at the front row, but you need to bring a towel because, but this is what it looks like on Carla's phone. It is like the iPhone 5S. I have one. Do I have it with me? I have all sorts of MFA, like multi-factor authentication on my old phone. So that's a rock and roll warrior phone right there. That's how it's going to look on an older phone, right? Smaller screen, and then here's the latter phones. And you notice how this menu is available, but it shows up on the side. And then as I press, my command or my shift, or I think in your control, I don't have a Windows machine. I don't know how, you go control ++ or control -, or in Apple, you go Apple minus, and you see how it renders differently as I zoom in and I zoom out. I have a couple of links here. I go home, go to page 1, page 2, and then I have a drop-down menu that gets me to page 3 and page 4. My page 1, hi, welcome to page 1. Hi, and welcome to page 2. Drop down, page 3, hi, and welcome. You get the idea. And then page 4, hi, welcome to page 4. And then page 4 is like super pro because it has its own cool menu at the top. Yes, sir.
We need a GitHub account, right?
Yes, if you want to synchronize with my repository. Otherwise, you do not.
Thank you.
So, but you know what? I think it's a sign of studliness for you to have your own account, to have your own presence on GitHub. I think there's kind of 2 important countries on the internet. One is Stack Overflow, where you guys probably need to have some kind of a presence. It can't hurt. And then there's GitHub. GitHub can get you your first job if you have a repository with some nice things in it, right? Like you should put your projects from this class in a GitHub repo so that you can interview in March. I mean, if I was to say to you, you could interview for a 45K part-time job in March, would you believe it? If you like this stuff, and my recommendation is, well, put your code up on GitHub so that people can talk to you about it, and make a little GIF movie or embed a YouTube in your GitHub account so that people can get a preview of what you're doing. Let me say this. You're going to have that in my class whether you put it up on GitHub or not. So his question, and he got the extra long answer, the like rant and rave answer, but what I'm saying is, yeah, get an account on GitHub and then experiment with pushing stuff up there, and that will be a way for you to represent yourself. I know if I was looking at, partnering with or hiring somebody and they had stuff up on GitHub, I would spend time with their GitHub to get to know their work better. And if you want to try to interview at nice places like Esri in Redlands, California, or Google, where they need to see your work, GitHub is a good place to show off. Yeah, and it would be very easy. So that's a good question he has. But you can survive without it. So let's kind of give you another skill right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click. I want to navigate backward because this one has my full drop-down. I want you to right-click on your web page right now because we're going to have very white, very empty web pages for a little while. Just get used to it. I'm very happy to see a very bland web page that has just white. I mean, if you're doing all sorts of cloud security behind the scenes to make the word hi appear, I'm gonna high five with you. I'm gonna get fired up about your stuff because the way that I see your websites is not necessarily what's happening here. But check this out. Right-click on your web page and go Inspect Element. If you're on Chrome, Inspect Element will show up. If you're on Safari, Inspect Element will show up. If you're on Firefox, I believe it will also. Chrome and Safari are kind of where I spend my time as a Mac person. Inspect Element, and this cool additional console will open up. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if you need to enable development mode in the kind of browser that you're using. I forget that you need to enable developer mode because that's where I operate, but you need to kind of enter, and here's Chrome. Chrome needs to be sort of in development mode, and I forget how that works.
Seems like Safari needs to be as well.
Yeah, it just takes a few clicks to get into developer mode so that this cool console will show up. To me, I could see like 4 or 5 words on your page and get really fired up if you leveraged the public internet to deliver those 4 words to me. That's the way I feel about it.
Control-Shift-I for PC and Chrome should give you that right now.
That's great. For Chrome, yeah. Control-Shift-I. Here, let me try that. Control-Shift-I. Command-Shift.
I'm on a PC.
Shift-I. That gives me a new. Okay. You can see that I'm pretty good with just. I'm good to go with just quickly. That's how I do it. All I'm saying is you might need to enable developer mode to get that capability, the saying ahead of time. But you can see all the code that's running in the background here. This is my way of studying how a web product works. So let's say you do that here with my Bootstrap. And then what is additionally cool is that you can touch on, and I'm in Safari right now, the same thing happens with Chrome. But you can see that I can, on Safari, and you can do this with Chrome too, you select this little selector. This is a target, a little reticle right there. And then I can choose things on the web page, and it will show off the markup used by that element. So if I and it will kind of drill down into the markup where that piece was rendered. And for you guys, I think that there's a little bit of a development cycle where you're not, this is what you should do. First, go to GitHub, steal some code from my GitHub. Steal first. Study. See how it works. So this is what I did right here. Just double click a file. You don't want Bootstrap HTML. Open it up. First thing you do is you use it a little bit. You're like, oh, okay, I think I see what this thing is doing. Get the limits of what it's doing. Spend a few minutes with that. Secondly, inspect element. And then start to highlight things and say, oh, okay, well that line is driving that innovation, right? That line is driving that feature, and you can wrap back through the code, and it will kind of show you what to code in order to get certain features to show up. So after 2 or 3 minutes, you're in the driver's seat. You're shopping for web dev features. You're shopping for software at this point, where you're like, I like that. I want to use that. Now, the joke is on the rest of the internet, because you can also go to great looking websites like Apple and say, man, how do they make that work? Notice how Chrome is slightly different. You're like, how does that? And go on the highlight, and I hover over something. You're like, oh, okay, that's how they strategize that. That's how they make that work. And what I'm going to say, that this highlighting stuff that's in the page gives me a good position to talk about what Bootstrap is and how it works. Bootstrap is primarily a CSS, or a cascading style sheet. Now, Bootstrap depends upon JavaScript working behind the scenes to render your HTML in an optimal way, given the size, width, height of the viewport itself, right? But really what Bootstrap is behind the scenes is a CSS. So you go into the CSS, there's a CSS file. And here's Bootstrap. I'm showing it to you on GitHub. What Bootstrap is a series of classes. And if you call for this class, then it will provide these styling parameters. Like, it'll set the border color of it to this, and it will set a background image to this, and it will set a linear gradient to a background image, and maybe it will have a shadow on the text. And if I just scale back a little bit, you realize that these CSS files have a lot of styles in them. Okay? So when you're highlighting over something, you can see it says div class, navbar wrapper. Okay. Navbar wrapper. Let's go over here and let's search on this page for navbar wrapper. And I would like for it to find me stuff. I guess it's not doing that. Bootstrap CSS. Let's open that up. What if I were to do navbar wrapper? Oh, it's not there? Okay.
This find function kind of sucks in some way.
I
I don't know why. It sometimes doesn't find things that I'm literally looking at.
I feel like if I say something bad about Chrome, I might get banned from YouTube. So I'm just going to say, I'm sure Chrome knows how to do this search way. What I'm saying is, the navbar wrapper class is available in here somewhere. There's 1,000 lines, but it's in here somewhere. But I tell you what, let's do this another way.
Navbar is
Did I just go over it?
I don't see navbar wrapper, but I see like navbar.
Did you just see? Was it on this one that you saw it?
No, the other one. On the GitHub.
My students are so smart.
I mean, navbar is there.
Yeah, we actually ended up. Well, this is what the CSS looks like, and I just wanted to prove to you that this class navbar default is in the .css file. So when your HTML uses that class, it's actually reading the parameters in that file. And that's a lot to read, so let's just go over to the other one. Sorry if you're... This is a great example right here. We get navbar wrapper, and the properties of navbar wrapper are right here. And these properties, you can see them in the browser, but they're being read from the CSS file that is actually been sent to your browser. So if you think about that for a sec, here you have your AWS file. And your AWS is actually going to be sending that CSS file to the user's browser. Now, usually most browsers cache files so that it only needs to download it once. And that could be a good thing, but that CSS is traveling over the internet in order to provide style for your web page when you ask for it. I'm losing track of all my examples here. That's my problem. I shouldn't have had more than one browser open. Yeah, I think. So what I'm going to do when I load these examples, CSS is going to come and be used to make the site look good. But it also means that you need to be aware of where that CSS is in relation to your file. So here I have my file, Unit1 Bootstrap. And that Unit1 Bootstrap is going to need the CSS file that's in the CSS folder right next to my Unit1 Bootstrap file. Now the reason why I say this is you guys right now have the Bootstrap 4.0 beta dist folder. And you should put your HTML files like right next to the CSS folder. And let me just say this, and then I'm going to wrap the lecture up. The reason why this example is working is because, let's go to the GitHub where it's very easy to read. Here's my on Bootstrap HTML. And you all can see this code in the back row, right? Yes. Now what's important is that you have a head part to every web page. And this is a lot of gobbledygook important stuff. None of this is very important right now. But you also see this link href. That's where I get the CSS to work. Because I have this link href, what it's doing is it's saying, hi, link to this CSS file right here as a style sheet. And that is what gets the identity of the black, and the font of the text, and the feel, and the way that it lights up. Those are things that come from the style sheet. But that Bootstrap CSS needs to be inside of the CSS folder right next to your file in order for the browser to find it. Does that make sense? So that's going to be your first lesson, which is you're using Bootstrap, but you need to tell your HTML where Bootstrap is. And the Bootstrap could be anywhere on the internet. Okay? Now it just so happens we're going to put Bootstrap right next to your HTML file. Okay? So as you go into, here's a Bootstrap, on the public internet, they're actually grabbing a style sheet right here. That's a URL to a place where Bootstrap is living right now. It's hosted somewhere. And let me just go back, because that's one way to get Bootstrap. But the second way is to actually link to Bootstrap using this code right here. You can actually ask for a copy of Bootstrap to be downloaded every time your user sees your page by using this line right here. And that's called the Bootstrap Cdn, or the Bootstrap Content Delivery Network. And that's a very easy way to make Bootstrap work every time your page loads without you guys having to have Bootstrap in your S3 cloud. Now, just let that sink in a little bit. It's probably going to go past you at about 100 miles an hour, but that's why we have YouTube. But I'm just saying, you guys are CISers, and you're thinking about, okay, I own a cloud, and then I have this big Bootstrap library, and I got to put this Bootstrap library in my cloud, and then I got to link to that Bootstrap library whenever I load my page. And that's the real deal, and that's what I'm going to have you do. But the alternative to that is to actually grab Bootstrap that's sitting out here at maxcdn.bootstrapcdn.com. And that's a very easy way to get Bootstrap to appear. And Bootstrap doesn't seem to care about that. They're like, hey, we're Twitter. We're good. We got public shareholders. We don't lose that much money. You can have Bootstrap for free. I'm sure it costs them millions of dollars every year to CDN their Bootstrap. I don't doubt it. That's just Google. Google has CDNs for terabytes of open source code. You can probably get Bootstrap from Google too. Google, they're like, hey, whatever. We're CIA, it doesn't matter. Your tax dollars have bootstrapped us long ago, so Just kidding. Don't ban me, Google. All right, so I tell you what, let's take a little break. That'll be our first video. Anybody have any smart questions right now? Like brilliant question over there. You see how he asked the question? And it's partly, I try to be as respectful as possible to folks asking questions. Teachers tend to be kind of stressed out people, so they come across as a little dangerous to talk to in the middle of a lecture. But believe me, we appreciate questions. Sometimes we mess it up, but we're trying to be respectful to the students. Does that make sense? We're at least trying to be nice.
So can you say that CSS is like the web design portion?
Yes,
of web development?
It absolutely is. It's like the HTML is just the structure, is just the order of things as they should appear, and then the CSS is the identity. It's the graphics. It's the look and the feel. Exactly what you said. The web design piece. So, in reality, if you all were being web design majors, such as you can be, you'd be spending your days and nights configuring CSS. Does that make sense? These properties. And your life would be this. And I don't envy that. I would like for your life to be this, to be the cloud, to be the security, to be the performance, the throughput, the analytics piece, and to be the textual element. It's harder to find people who focus on those things, and they are the product. Design is just a piece of it. There's some kind of inner feature. There's some inner value that design is not necessarily that thing. Does that make sense? The last story I'll tell you before I let you take a break is this. You all are Reddit fans. Can I bring up Reddit here? Trigger warning. I don't know what's on Reddit today. It could be something. Yeah, okay. I must have made. Oh, okay. What's popular? Do I want to know that? Okay. Now, is there a lot of design happening here at Reddit? Does this seem like a competitor to Apple in terms of its design? Does it feels a little outmoded? Does that stop you guys from looking at Reddit? You guys want the pure ranking. The analytics are a huge reason why Reddit is loved by its young component. Let me say this. When I was younger, there was not Reddit. There was a site called Dig. You ever heard of it? And you're like,
2 G's, right?
Yeah, no one looks at that. Dig died over the course of one day. Now, HTML, Dig does not look like it's a site that distinguishes itself from, how do you distinguish Dig from any other web property? Does that make sense? Dig basically was this for a little while, but it drank the HTML5 Kool-Aid that Google was putting forth. Google is one of the great evangelists for HTML5. They want for the web to be just completely, they don't want apps. Google doesn't want apps. Google wants for there to be HTML. They can parse HTML, categorize, provide a retrievable copy of HTML. But what was happening is roughly around 2010, there was really two competing visions of the future. One of them was Google's HTML5 future, right? And Dig happened to be a major brand at the time. And so they were like, guess what? We're going to redo our entire site so that it's HTML5. Boom. They drank the Kool-Aid. Now, the other competing idea of the future was the Steve Jobs Apple App Store. And that was going to feed the iPhone, right? And the iPhone was to become relevant because of the App Store. This is about 2010, about 2 years after the iPhone's entry. You know, the iPhone is a fairly difficult to justify device until the App Store. So 2010 was this inflection point, and I remember it clearly. But I forget if it was 2010 when Dig dies, but Dig comes out with their site redesign, HTML5. It's going to be HTML5, we promise. Like, who cares if it's HTML5? The next day, they're like, it's like calling something sustainable. Like, your shoes are sustainable. You know, like, anybody really cares about that. You know, it's this kind of weird, like, who cares? You know, it doesn't, like, give me something real. Don't give me ideas. I can't consume ideas. Who cares if it's HTML5? Well, the Dig people said it's going to be HTML5. The next day, people look at it, we don't like it. They went to Reddit instead. And they never left Reddit. At the time, Reddit was a small peripheral site in the corner of the internet, and it had these little r/communities, and you know, it was considered to be kind of a, I don't know, you know, like kind of the weird people were kind of there, and the kind of cool underground, not the cool, but the kind of the people you never talk to were over on Reddit, you know, reading dark little pages about how to crack your PS4 and how to steal, you know, what Bitcoin, you know, like these Verge criminal types were on Reddit, but everybody got nobody liked the Dig thing, and they never went back to Dig. And now Reddit is one of the great sources of popular culture. You know, people solve mysteries on Reddit. You know, like what major crisis does not have, like the internet is finding the solution to the lost dog right now on Reddit, right? What mass shooting, what tremendous thing that's happening is not somehow being addressed in some relevant way on Reddit right now. Reddit is a great source of, you know, of action on the internet, but Reddit has no sense of design whatsoever. So what is the top? I'm not going to go to controversial because, you know, just so, you know, these are the big trending posts. So really, it's the data element. You know, it's the upvote that proves the relevance of these posts, right? And you young people have your own media culture. You have a distinct, you know, hive mind, you know, that's distinct, separate from us fogies, right, who are looking at different stuff, right? But I'll say this. What do the old fogies look at? Trigger alert, Drudge report. You know, people are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't even think Drudge has a CSS file. I've done this before. Here, let's look at we're on a college campus, so I'm going to try to not read the headlines, you know, trigger alert, it's fine. But, you know, I've tried to find, I've said, you know, Drudge reports that it's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's not, I'm looking for the CSS. Okay, that's some CSS. Okay, no, that's some CSS. Okay, that's some CSS. That's about the extent of the CSS there. And there's a little bit more CSS right there. So let me say this. Most of the CSS is all about how to make the ads show up. I'm a little shocked. Last time I looked on Drudge report for CSS, there was no CSS. There was like 2 lines, like defining like Times New Roman 12-point font. You know, Drudge is meant to look like a grainy old newspaper. Now let me say this: if you're, you know, more of the college crowd, Huffington Post sees itself on somewhat of a dialogue with Drudge. For a long time, HuffPo looked like Drudge. Now this is their new 2018 feel, and it does not look like Drudge. It has its own identity, but it looked like a counterpoint to Drudge. It's like the opposition to Drudge, right? And it was trying to use that very dry, very immediate, very styleless. I think the older crowd looks at this because it looks like, you know, it looks like data. It looks like there's no attempt to dress it up. The dryness of it is similar to what, you know, this is what a highly designed website that nobody reads looks like. You know, Reddit benefits from looking like pure, unadulterated data, like the data feed. It's like a text message. It's just pure neurological stimulation. So you need to think about that as we get obsessed with UI. We're going to be less. We're going to try to be more of a Craigslist or a Reddit, less of a dig. Dig? Can you dig it? Okay, let's take a break. Thank you.